Hey, so what happened to zombie games? Well, I know what happened, same that happened to all the other zombie stuff. It fell off. I'm sure you remember the 2000s and early 2010s, zombies were everywhere. There were a bajillion zombie movies, Resident Evil was, ironically, putting out some of their worst games, and everyone loved The Walking Dead until they didn't anymore because it just refused to die. Now, I was still a child when that show started. When it ended,
I was already a man.
you see, I want to travel back to before The Walking Dead became bad. Back when zombies were still actually relevant. Back to a time when Twitter was still kind of a normal site, instead of being the miserable hellscape of endless debates about the literal most basic, trivial that it is now. Actually, no, I take that back. Twitter's always been like this. Back to a time before Kanye admitted to giving his cousin head. Back to 2015, when a little game called Dying Light came out. God damn it. Hey, do we have an Asmongold situation? What? A guy just fell through the ceiling, so do we have an Asmongold situation? Dude, I have no idea what the f you're talking about. Alright. We play as Kyle Crane, an operative for the GRE, who's being sent into the Middle Eastern city of Harran to recover some data that a local politician stole. And there's already something I like, that being that it's not set in America. Because I honestly can't name a single zombie anything that's not set in America. Actually, now I think about it, Wreck is not set in America, 28 Days Later is not set in America. Still though, you get my point, the vast majority of zombie media is set in America, and as a part of the 96% of the world that isn't American, it's nice to see a zombie game that's, set somewhere else. Kyle is almost immediately attacked by some goons.
I told you that wasn't a normal drop shoot.
You gonna make me act up.
No, I said goons, not gooners. Then he's immediately bitten by a zombie. Luckily though, we're rescued by some survivors who just conveniently happen to be in the area. They bring us to the tower, where we meet Rahim. He's a little shit, as Kyle correctly observes.
Little shit.
He's also the brother of Jade, the woman that saved us. Rahim tells us that if we want to stay here, we gotta make ourselves useful. So he tells us to go check on the guy down on the 13th floor. The guy's been attacked by a zombie. We get a little quick combat tutorial, and we help the guy out. After that, we get a quick parkour tutorial from Rahim, and then we're off to get a shot of Antizin to, make sure we don't turn into a zombie. And now we're free to explore the city. And I really like that the game doesn't waste that much time getting to the actual gameplay. It literally drops you straight into the city, gives you a quick tutorial, and then you're off to get mauled by hordes of zombies. The game also still looks pretty good. Yeah, it's obviously dated, but it still holds up pretty well. What doesn't hold up as well are the facial animations. They range from okay to really bad, and I'm pretty sure that even back in 2015, they still look bad. The voice acting also isn't the best. Some of the actors are pretty good. The guy that plays Kyle probably puts in the best performance.
You just doomed thousands of innocent people. That's what you get with your f***ing chaos.
But a lot of the side characters have some pretty meh deliveries. It's not really that big of an issue most of the time though. So obviously the game is quest-based because, well, it's an open world game. But there's also some side quests, because of course there are. I basically just stopped caring about them halfway through though, because most of them aren't that interesting and the rewards really aren't worth it either. But now that we're actually free to explore the city, you'll quickly realize that the game plays a little differently from your average zombie game, because it's basically part platformer. You see, the survivors in Harran figured out that the best way to avoid getting mauled by hordes of zombies that are literally everywhere is to just go over them. The game has a really big focus on parkour. They even got the inventor, or the guy who coined parkour, to help them make the parkour feel grounded. And it's really paid off, because the platforming feels tight. It feels like your jumps have a good weight to them without either feeling kind of weirdly floaty, or feeling like you're trying to do platforming in the body of EDP. And it always feels like you know whether you can make a jump, which is one of those things that you don't really notice unless it's missing. Like in Elden Ring, the platforming is sweaty swamp ass, both because you basically have no control of your jump once you leave the ground, so if you didn't make that jump perfectly, you're f***ed. And also because at least I could never properly judge the distance of my jumps, so every time the game forces you to platform, it basically just amounts to praying to America that you make the jump. The parkour mechanics also never really got tedious because the map's pretty varied, so it's not like you're just taking the same route every time. There also aren't any dumb invisible walls, so you don't just bonk your head on some random bullshit and fall to your death. The game also does a pretty good job of making it clear where you can and can't go without resorting to the Resident Evil patented piss splatter. Which, by the way, can I just ask, who the hell is pissing all over everything in Resident Evil?
I can't hold anymore. You grab it, Wesker.
Chris? What the hell?
Ethan, you are out of your depth.
You can unlock a grappling hook later, and I get why they added it, because not everyone's gonna like the parkour as much as I do, but the platforming is so fun that I never actually used it. Now, you're inevitably gonna have to kill a couple zombies, because, I don't know, man, there's zombies on the cover. But so that brings us to the question, is the combat good? Well, it's very heavily focused on melee weapons. You're not gonna find a lot of guns around here, because this isn't America, in case you hadn't noticed. You see any Walmarts around here? By the way, random fun fact. Did you know that Walmart tried to open up stores in Germany, but one of the reasons they failed was that apparently Walmart employees have to do a chant every morning before opening up? You know, like a cult. So nobody wanted to work there. That, and also, nobody in Europe wants to walk into a store and have employees all over them immediately. Just let me get my groceries in peace. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, there's not a lot of guns in Harran. It's only about halfway through that I actually got a gun, so for most of the game, you're just gonna be bashing zombie skulls in with whatever you find lying around. And there's a pretty decent variety in weapons. You got knives, blunt weapons like bats and sledgehammers, blades, scythes, you know, all the good stuff. The main weapon types I used were blades and bats, mostly because the little knives don't deal that much damage and also don't stun enemies. And the sledgehammers were just too slow, and that wasn't made up for with big damage, so they were just kinda useless. And the combat's also pretty satisfying. Whenever you get in a good hit, the game adds a little bit of slow-mo, which just makes you go, oh. The zombies are a bit tanky early on, though that's kinda to be expected, and later on you're gonna be slicing and dicing like your fucking blade. There's also a pretty neat upgrading system as well. You can find modifiers as random loot, they basically just increase some stats, that's it. The more interesting upgrades are the ones you can craft. Yeah, there's crafting. I'll get to that in a second. These upgrades usually just add a debuff onto your weapon as well as increasing the damage, like electric shocks, bleed, poison, though I always just ended up using the Toxic Reaper upgrade because it turns out slapping zombies with a chlamydia knife is pretty effective. So the melee combat is pretty damn good for the most part. Like, it's not Elden Ring, but it's still pretty good. Though of course, there is a catch. You see, a lot of loot you find consists of weapons, and if you've ever played Breath of the Wild, you know what that means. Yep, that's right, weapon durability is a thing. And now personally, I don't really mind it that much. I didn't mind it in Breath of the Wild either, but I can see why some people won't like it. Though it's not as bad as in Breath of the Wild, because at least here, every weapon can be repaired, so they won't just disappear into the ether after like 2 swings. They can only be repaired a limited amount of times, but it's still nice. And I also kinda like the durability because it adds a like survival horror layer to the game of making you think about whether you want to use a worse weapon in order to save your better weapons for later. Although that can also just lead to you never using your good weapons because like, oh, sure, this motherfucker is, you know, 10 stories tall and has biceps the size of tree trunks, but what if I need this weapon for later? Now, the gunplay on the other hand is kinda ass. Like, it's not bad, but it just wasn't that fun. There's like 3 guns, and I basically only used the police rifle and the double barrel shotgun once I finally got my hands on that. Maybe I missed out on some other gun types, but those were the only ones I found. You can't upgrade any of them. There's not even like special bullet types, you know, which I think could have been really cool. Imagine if you could like craft poison bullets or something. But speaking of ammo, it's also pretty easy to get. All the human enemies later in the game drop enough ammo that you basically get a refund for every kill. And if you somehow do get low on ammo, you can just buy it, so you never really run low. The only times when I actually used the guns were against the human enemies because they're also strapped and they're annoying as hell, or when I was feeling really lazy. There's also a bunch of craftable consumables, Some of them are pretty useful, like the explosive throwing stars, which are basically an insta-kill for most zombies, and the DIY grenades. There's also less useful ones, like the boosters, which just increase some stats for like a minute, but they're all pretty easily crafted for the most part. The only item that I kept running out of materials for were the medkits, because I just went through so many of them. Like any good open world game, there's leveling, of course. It's split into 3 branches: power, agility, and survivor rank. The first 2 work exactly how you'd expect. You level them by doing parkour and beating the shit out of zombies respectively. Power just allows you to unlock some new attacks, most of which I never used. But there's also some actually useful stuff, like being able to increase your health and being able to stun zombies. Agility is also exactly what you'd expect. There's some more combat abilities, which I also never used, but you can unlock the ability to not break your ankles when you jump off a building. And there's also the amazing vault ability, which makes you able to crowd surf the undead hordes, though it also includes the worst ability in the entire game, Tic Tac, which makes you able to wall jump like you're Mario. Sounds good, right? Yeah, well, it's not. There's basically always a path you can climb up, so it's already not actually that useful in practice. But what kept happening to me is that I tried to climb up something, instead clamber onto the wall, because I guess you can't actually climb there, and then randomly jump off for no reason and probably die. Seriously, this kept happening to me, and once you have the ability, you're stuck with it. And lastly, survivor rank is probably the most interesting of the 3. There's some pretty good abilities, like being able to use the zombie corpses to camouflage yourself. Trust me, that comes in very useful when you're trying to lockpick some random cars to try and get some supplies from them. Oh yeah, lockpicking is a thing as well. It's Bethesda lockpicking. It's exactly how you expect. It did get kind of tedious because you do it a lot. But you can also unlock recipes for different throwing stars and grenades, unlock lower prices in the shops, and it's also where you unlock the grappling hook. So overall, this one's probably got the best unlocks, but it also does work a little differently from the other 2 branches, because unlike those 2, you can actually lose XP by dying, which I like, because that's a little bit more punishment to playing like a complete dumbass. Alright, this is nice and all, but this is a zombie game, right? So what about the zombies? Fear not, dear viewer, I was just about to get to them, you impatient f***. You've obviously got your standard biters. You know, they're slow, but there's a ton of them, so if you don't pay attention, you can easily get surrounded and mauled to death. Also, you know how, like, in a lot of games, the zombies with, like, a grab attack where they bite the shit out of you, but you somehow don't get infected? Well, here it actually makes sense for once, because, well, Kyle is already infected. Now then there's the virals. These are the most annoying motherfuckers in the entire game. They're fast, they have the dodging skills of someone who's put 1,000 hours into Elden Ring and has played every single FromSoft game before that. They can spot you from a mile away and they won't leave you alone. Also, they're attracted by loud noises, so if you fire off just one shot, prepare to have a horde of them on your ass. And worse yet, they climb now. Yeah, you're not even actually safe on the roofs. The only good thing about them is that they don't have that much health. They are also so annoying that every time I heard their annoying ass screams in the distance, I would legit just groan. But despite how much I hate these fuckers, I get why they're in the game, because the gameplay would suck if you could just hide on top of the buildings the whole game. Doesn't change that I hate them though. There's some other variants like the big sledgehammer dudes. They're pretty easily avoided. They basically barely move. Sure, they deal high damage, but like you can just go around them. There's also spitters and boomers. I think you can figure out what they do on your own. The boomers can actually be pretty annoying, not because they do a lot of damage, because they don't, or because they keep harassing minimum wage workers, but because their explosions attract virals. The spitters and the boomers also become pretty common later on. And lastly, there's demolishers. They deal massive damage, they have a ton of health.
Ooh, that's kind of small. Yikes.
And they also wear bulletproof armor that you gotta blast off, which makes them really annoying to fight because they're super bullet spongy. They luckily aren't that common, and they only show up halfway through the game. They also aren't that much of a threat as long as you stay above them. Sure, they can throw rocks at you, but they have such a long wind-up animation that if you get hit by them, you only have yourself to blame. I don't feel sympathy for you at all. So, we set up some traps for the zombies so the tower's runners can go out at night to try and grab the airdrops. But right before night, we're told that all the airdrops had already been raided, so Kyle volunteers to try and grab the last one. Though Jade tells us not to stay out at night cause
The nightmares are awake. Don't let them see.
we find the airdrop, but then we're contacted by the GRE.
Crane here. I'm about to recover an antizin drop.
Good, Crane. This offers us a new strategy. Time to turn your attention to Rise. Listen closely. It's very possible that Rise is our man. So if you find an airdrop containing antizin, destroy it.
What? What? Why?
It will force interaction with Rise. You can go under Brecken's auspices as an ambassador, if you will.
But there are civilians depending on this stuff.
Our plan is focused on the greater good. Remember that.
Oh, shit. They must have heard me.
Yummers.
Hey, I think it's probably time to run for your life! That, my friend, is volatile, and they are the scariest f***ing thing in the entire game. They are basically virals on Monster Energy, steroids, crack, and heroin. They're fast as f***, they deal massive damage, and they're also super tanky. You cannot fight these things, and if they see you, they alert all the volatiles in the area. So your only option is to run for your f***ing life or get jumped so ridiculously hard. Their only weakness is sunlight.
There are no words to express the pain that I feel right now.
And the UV flashlight you're given, but it only lasts for a couple seconds, so it's not much of a weapon. That's a neat little bit of world building, by the way, because not only does it explain why they don't come out during the day, but it also gives a good reason why the safe zones don't immediately get overrun by hordes of rabid zombies. It's cause they're covered in UV lights. To make things worse, during the night some biters will just randomly turn into virals. And any virals that spot you will also immediately alert all the volatiles as well. So basically, the night is just one big cluster of hellish bullshit. But to make it a little bit worth staying out at night, all the XP is doubled. Honestly, this is probably the scariest part of the game, which kind of brings me to the last thing I want to talk about before getting into the plot, and that's the horror. There's not a lot of it. There's definitely some parts that are kinda tense, but overall the only sections that were really scary were the nights. And I think that there's some missed potential. Because I remember there's this part where you go through a tunnel filled with piles of corpses, and I was super on edge because I was expecting there to be a horde of volatiles, but there weren't. So it just ended up kind of being underwhelming. But that's basically everything about the gameplay. And overall, it's pretty good. Like, I really love the parkour. I think the combat's pretty good overall. But that brings me to the plot. So because Kyle destroyed the antizin, the tower is forced to make a deal with Rise, the local warlord. And spoilers, Rise is the main villain. Like, he's almost cartoonishly evil, but I kinda like him because at least he's entertaining. And also actually kind of intimidating. He tasks us with doing a bunch of stuff for him before he'll give us some of that juicy antizin. So we do, but well, you see, Rise is a dick. So he only gives us a couple vials instead of the 2 crates he promised, and he'll only consider giving us more if we bring him Jade so he can force her to fight in his arena. Because yes, of course he has a f***ing gladiator arena. And here I'll give the game some credit though, because you can find posters showing that Jade was like a kickboxer all over the city. It's a neat little bit of storytelling in the background. Kyle obviously tells Rise to go f*** himself, but that still leaves the issue of, you know, not having any antizin. So Jade convinces us to raid one of Rise's supply depots, but the only thing we find there are some explosive, which we take with us. We also help Dr. Zero with his research by getting a tissue sample from a bolter. I didn't mention bolters earlier because they literally only exist so you can do this one quest. Anyways, remember those explosives I literally just mentioned? Yeah, alright, so Rahim, dumb that he is, decides to use those to try and blow up a volatile nest. Things obviously don't go well, so he calls us to help him out. And when we find him, he's bleeding out. There's no time to help him though, because Rahim, dumb that he is, decides to arm the bombs. So now we have 2 minutes to run into the nest, place the bombs down, and GTFO out in there, you know, before we explode. But at least it means that the tower's runners can go out at night now. It has no actual gameplay difference, like you're still gonna have to fight volatiles at night, but Rahim's not actually around to celebrate.
Oh shit! No, Raheem, stop! Raheem, it's me! It's me, kid, it's Crane! Oh, Jesus! Raheem, stop!
I think they did a decent job of making you care about Raheem's death, despite how little time we spend with him. I know it probably doesn't seem like it from this video, but he's probably one of the better developed characters, because he's just a kid trying to help out the people in the tower. Sure, he's also a dumb but I still felt kinda bad for him. It also helps that Kyle's voice actor really sells the emotion.
You goddamn stupid fucking kid! Oh god.
Jade obviously doesn't take her brother's death too well, and to make things worse, Rise, being a dick, kidnaps Zere. So we go out and find him, but Rise captures us and throws us into... So, we can fight a bunch of zombies. At this point, that's barely a challenge. And as a reward for beating his challenge, Rise gives us a present. And present sucks. This is your first encounter with Demolisher, and also one of only 2 boss fights in the main game. We kill it because we are... But Rise won't let us go. He has a Joker monologue about chaos and then publishes the data that he stole from the GRE, but he then reveals to Kyle that the GRE was never working on a cure, the data was actually on weaponizing the virus. The DLC actually implies that the outbreak was a government experiment, or aliens. The game also implies that it might have been aliens. He then tells his men to, kill us, but, Kyle does some fucking Matrix bullshit and cuts off Rise's hand, but Zara's already been stabbed, so he's not making it out. Rise does some medieval shit and cauterizes his own stump with a torch, and then tells his men that maybe, just maybe, it'd be a smart idea to, shoot Kyle. We get a big cinematic escape sequence and are then contacted by the survivors in Sector 0, so we go there, do a bunch of quests, including trying to make the outside world aware that they're still survivors, but of course the GRE covers it up to make sure the world doesn't learn about all the evil shit they're doing. Jade contacts us because she's found a way to break through the jamming to contact the military before they bomb the place, but Rise, being a dick, kidnaps Jade and dares us to come to the museum to rescue her because, you see, he's that special kind of dick that, actually f***ing wants to fight you. So Kyle channels his inner John Wick and murders his way through the museum and finds Jade, but Rise, being just a massive cock, infected her and then tosses us just 1 vial of antizin because he wants to f with Kyle. Kyle's own infection conveniently kicks in and we start tripping balls. Jade saves us though, but you can probably go where this is going. I think I had a stroke while reading this part in the script. So she turns. I mean, I'd still go for some of that bussy. Kyle mercy kills her. We then fight Rise's right-hand guy Tahir, which is the only other boss fight. The fight kinda sucks though, because he's basically just a bigger version of Rise's dudes, which are already annoying to fight. And he's pretty tanky, so the fight just drags on. But we kill him, leaving Rise completely handless. And from there we make our way to a radio tower, break through the jamming, and get the pilots to turn around just in time. Realistically, they'd probably still just bomb the city anyways, because, those are their orders, but I guess these guys actually have morals. The GRE then contacts us, trying to get Kyle to give them Zare's data, but Kyle decides that maybe giving the data to the guys that literally want to pull a Resident Evil and sell a zombie virus as a weapon isn't the smartest idea, so instead he gives it to Dr. Camden, Zare's research partner. We then contact the GRE to try and make a deal with them, but...
Kyle Crane, you can hear me, can you not?
That's right, Rise. Now not just being a dick anymore, but having achieved the pure concentrated essence of dick and ascending to a whole new plane of dick, has made a deal with the GRE to get him out of there in exchange for Zara's research. Then he has another Joker monologue about how Kyle and him are in
a war of opposing philosophies.
The game's basically trying to make this into a Dark Knight thing, but the problem is that it's not built up enough. It's like if in the Dark Knight, instead of building up the battle between Joker and Batman for the whole movie, they just kind of randomly slap that in there at the end. Anyways, we go to Rise's tower to confront him, and we learn that he's infected all of his men because Rise is a dick. We are Kyle Crane though, so the zombies aren't that much of a problem. We make our way all the way to the top, and it's, you know, it's a pretty cool cinematic little sequence. Rise, of course, taunts us all the way up because he's dick. We finally confront him at the top, and we finally defeat him in a QTE battle that I definitely didn't fail way too many times, like a fucking dumbass. It's kind of underwhelming, but I guess the alternative was just another Tahir style battle, which would have probably sucked as well. Anyways, Rise dies, and Kyle decides to stay in Harran to help the survivors there and to help Camden make a cure. The plot's alright, it's nothing special, but it's not bad. It's decent. The biggest issue is that we don't spend enough time with a lot of characters. Like Zara and Jade, if they'd had more scenes, their depths would have worked better, but as it is, we don't spend enough time to really get a feel for their character. And I already told you my issues with Rise, you know. I just feel like they could have executed this, like, battle of philosophies better. It's just not built up enough. But he's a decent villain still. Kyle is honestly a pretty good main character. It's got, like, an interesting moral conflict with the GRE. He's reasonably likable, but, you know, he's not just, like, a blank slate, cardboard cutout good guy, you know. And also, the voice acting is really good. Alright, now you ever watching a movie and like, you think, oh shit, this is the end of the movie, and then you look at how much time's left, and there's like another half hour? Yeah, that's what this is. You see, a year after the game came out, the devs released the following DLC, and it's so big that while playing I realized it was gonna need a whole section of the video. So the DLC is set after the main game. It opens up with this quote to try and seem deep, I guess. Like they didn't even take some like quote from some old poem or something. They took a quote from the 1994 Frankenstein movie. Though at least it actually relates to the ending of the DLC. Camden's research hasn't led to anything, and the tower's running out of antizin. And immediately, I don't really like this. It kind of retroactively makes Zara's sacrifice worse, because now he basically died for nothing. Luckily for Kyle, a random runner comes back babbling about a cure and the mother. So Kyle goes out to the countryside to figure out what the hell that guy was talking about, and whether there's actually a cure. So we make our way to a settlement, where we learn that the reason the locals are immune to the virus is because of a local cult called the following. So our goal becomes to figure out how the hell these guys can survive. Now, what I really like is that the DLC feels pretty different from the main game. Most of that is just because the countryside is much more open, so there's a lot less focus on platforming. Instead, you've got a buggy now, which finally allows me to live out my dreams of actually being able to drive. Though I kinda just made it clear why I probably shouldn't have a driver's license. It's a pretty good replacement for the platforming, and it's super fucking satisfying to ram into hordes of zombies. They're not entirely safe. Virals and volatiles can jump onto the buggy, and volatiles can also just straight up keep up with you. If you stay out at night, you're basically fucked, because if you encounter any volatiles, you are immediately gonna have an entire horde on your ass, and if you aren't constantly going at full speed, or you randomly hit a rock or something, you die. The car also has a pretty simple upgrading system. Your buggy's got 5 parts, and while I'm sure they all improve different stats or something, I have no idea what they actually do. I just know that better parts made my car go brrr. You can find parts as loot, but you can also just buy them and make them. But the really annoying thing is that they also have durability. You can repair them, but you need materials that you can only get from the broken down cars around the map. They're constantly stopping to get out of the car, loot, then get back in to continue driving. Rinse and repeat over and over again. And yeah, you can't blame my dumbass driving for that, but it's still annoying. Now, there is also a new branch of leveling. It's just dedicated to the fucking car. It just allows you to upgrade your car, basically. I'm gonna be real with you, it's not really that useful. There's some decent upgrades, but yeah. Now then, there's also boomers all over the road, and crashing also attracts virals, so they're gonna constantly be eating your ass the non-sexy way. The buggy also does become a little boring after a while, just because you keep driving between the same areas over the same roads. The countryside also has some new challenges, like the boss zombies around the map, that I never really fought. I think they're just stronger versions of the regular zombies. I just didn't really care enough to fight any of them. Now, remember how I mentioned that I wish that there were some more encounters with volatiles outside of nighttime? Yeah, I got my wish. There's a bunch of volatile nests around the countryside. I tried exploring them, but I never actually managed to destroy any of them because there's so many volatiles that I always ended up being spotted, and there's nowhere to hide, so you're gonna get from every direction, and you don't even get the comfort of a casting couch. Although their dicks rotted off, so I guess I don't actually know how they'd fuck you. Maybe that's why they have that freaky split mouth. They had to compensate by getting really good at giving head. The things I think up while writing these scripts. You can't just brute force your way through either. Trust me, I tried. The biggest issue I have with the DLC though is that most of it is made up of doing side quests, because in order to get in good with the local cult, you have to increase your trust with them. And while you get a couple main important quests that actually continue the story, in order to get to the next level, you have to do at least some side quests. It's not as bad as say Fallout 4, where I kept doing Minuteman quests to get the Minuteman ending, only to learn there is no Minuteman ending, and that I'd wasted hours of my life protecting random settlements, and this motherfucker still had the nerve to keep going.
Another settlement has sent word that they need our help. I'll mark it on your map.
It's not as bad here, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't trigger my PTSD a little bit. It just feels like padding, but overall I didn't mind it that much. The gameplay's still obviously good, and I like the stuff they added. Now, for the story, I'm just gonna skip to the end because the middle of the DLC is mostly just doing side quests and stuff that doesn't matter that much. So we find out that a bunch of Rise's guys, having also inherited Rise's dickishness, have banded together to steal the cure. We confront the leader at the top of a lighthouse, and turns out that it's this random guy that we saw twice in the entire DLC. Like, they tried to do a twist here, but it doesn't work because we've literally only seen this guy twice. I don't know this character. But we kill him, escape from all the other guys, and make our way to the dam to protect the mother. We make our way inside and finally get to talk to her. Now, up until this point, we've learned a little about the mother. She was the wife of a local colonel and was already the mother of the cult before the outbreak, but we haven't actually talked to her or even really seen her up until now. She reveals, right, that after the outbreak she was bitten and her husband was killed, but before he was killed, he told her the location of a cure. Though the cure had some side effects. Well, I guess I figured out what the point of the mask is. The cure's not actually a cure at all. Sure, it allowed the mother to keep her sentience, but in the dark, she reverts to just being a regular volatile. She also implies that the zombies have a kind of hive mind, which is kind of a cool idea, but it's not really explored. And she also reveals that we're also already turning in what she is, thanks to the fumes we've been inhaling. We're then given two choices. Either we can help her set off a nuke to destroy the whole region, sacrificing thousands of people to save the rest of the world from the virus, or we can refuse and take the cure back with us. I chose the latter. This obviously enrages the mother, so she forces us to drink the not cure, and then we get a pretty cool boss fight. It's definitely way better than any of the bosses in the main game. Halfway through, we begin turning, so we have to resort to clawing at her.
Now I fight as Harran, warrior!
But we do eventually kill her and make our way through the sewers with the cure.
Where am I? What? What's going on? No! Wait!
The alternate ending is that we just help the mother nuke the whole place, though considering that Kyle is apparently still alive because he's gonna be in Dying Light the Beast, I'm assuming that this isn't the canon ending. That or Kyle is somehow fucking nuke proof. Now, I like the story here more, honestly, especially the ending. I think it's just more interesting than the main game, and the mother is a pretty interesting character, even though she has the same problem as basically every other character, which is that we don't get enough scenes with her. It's actually worse with her because she literally only appears one other time before this. Alrighty, so I have talked about every single thing about this game that I could possibly think of. If I somehow have still missed something, feel free to point it out in the comments. So that begs the question, is Dying Light good? Oh yeah, absolutely. Have you not been paying attention for the past 30 minutes? I mean, look, there's a couple little issues here and there, and the DLC I think is probably the most flawed part of the game. But even the DLC is still pretty good. I'm gonna be honest with you, I think the game is honestly weirdly kind of underrated, which is weird to say because the game was really successful. But like, I feel like you never really hear anyone talk about it anymore, and I really feel like more people need to go back and play it because it's really good. And it also really just stands out from a lot of other zombie games because of the focus on the melee combat, the parkour mechanics, which are just chef's kiss. And I think it just deserves more recognition for actually standing out in a subgenre that is so, well, was so oversaturated. And I definitely think that the game is worth the, hold on, what did I pay for this game again? Let me look it up. I paid a grand total, yes, I'd like to view the page, Steam, a grand total of $20. How much is the DLC again? Anyways, that's still only a total of like $30. I definitely say if you have $30 lying around, give it a try. So yeah, Dying Light is pretty good. Anyways, I gotta go. Oh, what the fuck is this? Oh no, one of those zombies earlier must have bit me. Oh god. So should we do something about that? Yeah, I think I got a pretty good solution right here.